Hello guys, this is Mr. Kareem from Tala'anur International Schools, and in this video we will revise together the second selection, which is the science of silk. As you know, we have the final exam of reading, so we have to revise very well, so please listen carefully, and once you finish the video you can study more from the book and also revise the vocab meanings to be ready for any question during the exam. Okay, so first of all we have to understand what does it mean the word silk. Okay, silk is a type of cloth, okay, which is very smooth, and we created or we produce it from the silkworm, okay, and it can be used in the clothing of the women, especially as you can see in the pictures, like the dressing for example and so on. Okay, after that we have to know the genre, and it's written here on the right, which is expository text, and it's the same genre of the previous selection if you remember. Okay, the fragrance. And I said in the previous video that the expository text means a text that we explain or give more information about specific topic or specific issue. Okay, so in this text we will just get some information, some explanation about the science of silk, how the silk was produced in the history and how we are producing it right now. As you can see this question here, how do people benefit from innovation? So simply the author or the writer is gonna tell us about the difference between producing the silk in the old history and now as new innovation, and we have new technologies that help us to produce the silk much easier. Okay, so this is our topic which we'll talk about. Okay, let's go to the first paragraph. When the silk making process was first developed 5,000 years ago in China. So here we have two important information. Number one, the country that began or started making the process of silk was China. So please put a circle on it. And also how many years it was developed or began to develop. As you can see, it's 5,000 years ago. So also take care of this information. Silk was a rare and expensive luxury. So 5,000 years ago the silk was not famous, was not common. It was something very rare. It's not available for all the people. Okay, because it was very expensive and luxury. The word luxury means that something is not cheap, something very high standard. Okay, not all the people can buy it or use it. Silk would still be sparse today. What does it mean, the word sparse? Sparse means very small parts, something very small in the part as a size or also as an amount. Okay, so the silk was about to be very small or very simple parts or amounts today if the people hadn't engaged in the manipulation of a natural process. So the old people, if they couldn't provide or make a progress or work more to produce more silk, it would be very small parts or very small amounts in our current days. So you have to understand that the old people made a lot of effort to produce the silk with bigger amounts and bigger parts to reach us right now. Okay, sericulture, which is the process or the activity of producing the silk by breeding the silkworms to produce silk. So you have to understand the meaning of sericulture. Let's circle this one. Yeah, and it means the process or the activity of producing the silk by the silkworms. And here you have a picture that show you the life cycle of the silkworm from being an egg then till it be an adult or a moth, a full worm. Okay, so here he's telling us the sericulture has improved greatly over the centuries. The century, as you know, 100 years. So over the 100 years, the sericulture process improved and became better a year after year. The technologies used in making silk thread and weaving silk fabric have also benefited from important innovations. So we depended on some innovations to help us to produce the silk in better way or better amount. Okay, and in the coming lines we will know what are the technologies that we used to produce the silk easier and better. Okay, a better silkworm. The silkworm is the larva. What does it mean, the word larva? This one. As you can see here in the picture, this is the larva. Okay, and what does it mean, larva? Simply it's form of the insect, but it's not fully developed. Okay, it's only put the eggs, then it became and you can say it like intermediate form from the insect, then it will be developing more to become the pupa. After the pupa it will be fully adult moth or complete insect. Okay, so the larva or the caterpillar is only the first type or the first form from the insect. The domesticated silk moth typically used in silk production, so we use these for producing the silk. The name Bombyx mori means mulberry silk moth. Okay, like the first form of the silk moth. As he said, moth means the last form of the insect. This is the adult one. This animal's life cycle has 4 stages. Take care. How many stages? 4. What are they? Eggs. Of course, this is the first one. The second is called larva, as we said, the first form. Okay, that makes the cocoon. Pupa, this is the third one. That changes inside the cocoon. And the cocoon, by the way, is the cover here that covers the pupa, this one. Okay, this is the cocoon, the cover of the pupa. And the last one is called what? The moth. This is the 4th stage. Okay, so how many stages? 4. Eggs, larva, pupa, moth. Silk is the material that the larva naturally produces that makes it cocoon. Okay, so this is the meaning of the silk, is the material that produced by the larva. Bombyx mori is hybrid. What does it mean, hybrid? Mixed. This word means like mix, the result of breeding particular species over many years. Here the breeding means to keep. Okay, you are keeping special or specific or particular types of the silkworms for many years. This selective modification on inherited traits was done to make stronger and more moth fly productive moth. For example, a Bombyx mori moth lays about 500 eggs. Take care of this number. So the Bombyx mori moth lays about 500 eggs, more than other species. So this is the best moth ever because it puts more eggs, 500 eggs. The eggs are hardier than other silkworm eggs. As a result, more of them survive to develop into larvae. Okay, the larvae are also healthy. Why? They eat enough to increase 10,000 times in size in just 4 to 6 weeks. Can you imagine this, guys? The larva will be doubled or increased 10,000 times in the size in just 6 weeks. Okay, most moths fly during their adult stage to find mates. Take care of the word mates, like partner. Okay, and places with plentiful food to lay their eggs, to put the eggs. But Bombyx mori is a mutated species of moth that is unable to fly. So take care of this. The Bombyx mori are not able to fly, unable to fly. Take care of this information. Okay? For this reason, it relies entirely on humans to provide its larvae with a special diet of nutrients from the leaves of white mulberry trees. Okay? Humans must also ensure that the eggs are kept at a temperature of 65 to 75 F, and the F here is related to Fahrenheit, which is the type of that temperature degree, until they hatch. So let's circle the temperature. It's very important. Okay. Take care about the temperature degree that the eggs should be kept in. And the word hatch means that the eggs will be broken and the worms are gonna get out of them. People go through this great effort because of silk. Bombyx mori is strong and break less often than wild silk. Take care. Why the people focus on the Bombyx mori? Why especially this type? Because it's strong and breaks less often than the wild silk. These are the two reasons why the people make an effort to produce the silk from a Bombyx mori. So this question may come as a WH. So you were right, because it's strong and breaks less often than wild silk. The filament from a single cocoon can be 3,000 feet long. Remember this number, please. 3,000 feet long when it's unwound. Bombyx mori silk is wider than wild silk. Also, this is another reason when you compare between the Bombyx mori and the wild silk. So it can absorb more dye. The filament is also round and smooth, resulting in a finer, more luminous cloth. So here, take care. These lines are about comparison between the Bombyx mori silk and the wild silk. We said here it's wider, okay, than the wild silk, and also it can absorb more dye, and it's round and smooth. This is something very important in the silk, to be very smooth. Okay, so the final result will be finer or better, of course, in the clothes, if you want to make clothes from this silk, as you can see. And this is the process itself in China. Okay, a woman is weaving the silk fabric. I think it's in Myanmar. That's also another country. Okay, from cocoon to thread. This is the details of the process itself, how it's going on. For thousands of years, raising silkworms to make silk was an important part of Chinese culture. We said it began in China. Women and girls were responsible for tending the worms, processing in cocoons, spinning the thread, and weaving fabric by hand. So take care of that. You are doing it by hand. It's something handmade. As you can see here in the picture, she's using her hand. These painstaking course produced beautiful results. They were also inefficient, consuming many hours per day and producing only a small amount of silk cloth. So take care. The amount was very small here, because it's not depending on any mechanics, okay, only by hand, no any machines. Okay. Much of the ancient process, ancient means very old. This one, the word ancient means very old. Okay, much of the ancient process survives. In current practices, cocoons are still harvested about 8 or 9 days after they form. Remember how many days here, please? 8 or 9 days. They are placed in water. They will put it in the water so that they soften enough to be unwound without breaking a filament of raw silk. To avoid The word avoid means to prevent building up a surplus of unsewable cocoons. A time-saving technique called reeling has been developed. So this is the first technique to be developed. Reeling, this one. Why? To save the time. It's time-saving technique. Okay. Has been developed to unwind several cocoons at once. So instead of making one cocoon in each time, no, now you will make several cocoons, unwind them together at once. The cocoons are gently brushed to find the loose ends, then the filaments are wound into a reel, like a roll, you know, when you put them all together in one package. A single raw silk filament is too thin, remember this, it's very thin, to use for waving. So the next common step is a process called throwing. So the first step was reeling, the second step is called throwing, this one. It involves twisting several filaments together to form a thread. Because only one thread is very, very thin, you can't use it. This is the final result of reeling. So we need it to be thicker, a little bit thicker, so we are throwing more than one filament together to form a thread, to be able to use it in the cloth. The thrown threads are then wound into small spools called bobbins, and this is the final step here. Okay, when you put the throwing threads together, you are getting into small spools, we call them bobbins. Okay, now we finished the first part, which is the old way of producing the silk. Now in this part, guys, we will begin the new technologies that we use to produce the silk. This is now it's a time for the modern technology. Okay, advances in silk technology. Silk moth eggs and the closely guarded secret of sericulture had to be smuggled out of China. The word smuggled, this one, means to get out of China. Okay, so they got it from China to the other countries that could make silk, especially in Europe, of course. Once the basic process was known, people sought to improve the technologies used in making the silk filament into clothes. One important invention was the French reeling. Take care of this line, please. This part. Okay, one important invention, okay, to help us to produce the silk better was the French reeling machine. Its a great innovation was to speed up the reeling process and reduce waste time. Okay, so remember the French reeling, this one. Okay, about 1800, the inventions of the jacquard loom enabled the silk weavers to create complex designs quickly. Okay, the machinized loom requires strong threads, so even better sericulture practices were developed. More recently, industrial weaving machines began using air to push the thread rapidly back and forth. This meant that fewer workers were needed to oversee. So now we are replacing the people by machines. That's why we reduce the number of the workers. Take care of this line. Fewer workers were needed. Why? Because we began to depend on the machines instead of the people. Because the machines will do the work faster and better, of course. To oversee the looms and that costs could be lowered. As a result, fine silk products were soon available at prices that more people could afford. If you remember, in the previous part we said that the silk was very expensive and not all the people can buy it, and it was rare to use. But after using the machines, we made it lower prices because we stopped using the workers and we are not giving them salaries, so the price of the silk became cheaper, so more people can afford it and can buy it in the clothes. Today, China remains the leading producer of silk. Take care of this information. So, although other countries began to produce the silk, but still China is the leader in producing the silk in all the world. But the demand for fine mulberry silk products reaches far beyond China's borders. For this reason, people will continue seeking better, more economical ways to produce silk. Okay, so this is the first part of the text. Now it's time for the vocab, and we need to know the meaning for each one. Okay, here we have the first word, which is sparse. Sparse means thinly distributed, grown or settled, something very small part or very thin in the amount or size. Mutated means changed or altered greatly in form or quality. When you change something greatly in the form or the quality, we call it mutated. Next, manipulation, clever or skillful control or management of a situation. When you modify or you manage the situation in a very good way, in a very skillful way, we call it manipulation. Next, industrial, relating to the use of technology, innovation, or machinery for large-scale production. When you use machines and innovations in your industry to make it easier and better, this is called industrial. Next, surplus, an amount that is greater than the which is needed. When you use something more than what you need, okay, with a very big amount or much more amount that you are not using, or it's not important for the process, this is called surplus. Something very great, very extra that you don't need in the process. Next, nutrients, substances containing nourishments that sustain life. These are the substances that we use for our body, the main substances that we need to grow to be bigger, to be older. Okay, like for example, the fruits, the vegetables, and the milk, the eggs, the proteins, the vitamins, anything that we can get from the food is called nutrients. Next, modification and alteration or change. Of course, when you modify something, you change it to the better. That's why we call it modification. Last word, inefficient. It means unable to achieve a desired result or effect because resources are not being used properly. Something is not achieving or not happening as a result of resources are not used properly. When you are not using the resources that you have in a good way, of course you will not achieve the result that you want. This is called inefficient. Something not efficient or not active or not used properly. So these are the vocab for this selection. I want you guys to study it again from the book, read it very well, highlight the same points please, revise each line and remember all the circuit information, and I wish you all the best.